Hello, and we are back with our guest speaker, Joel Mounts.
Hello.
Joel, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a senior here at Grand Valley, a biopsychology major, and have a fairly big interest in philosophy, so I'm excited to be here.
Okay, well, excellent. We're glad to have you on the show.
And real quick, this is off topic.
Sure.
Are you doing alternate breaks again this year?
Yes, sir.
Right on.
Spring break, I highly recommend it to everyone. It's a blast. It's a blast.
It really is even though I had strep throat for 3 days out of our trip. I went on a trip with Joel.
Bill was a trooper. He made it through.
Yeah, I climbed a mountain
He climbed a legitimate. It was a
with-
mountain. It was a
with a-
mountain that we were climbing.
with like 102-degree fever.
Yeah.
It was not under the best of circumstances, but even regardless of all the crap that I had to endure, it was an amazing experiment.
Incidentally, it is
I
too late
highly
to sign up this year, but next year. Hit up next year.
No, it is. Oh yeah, it is too late to sign up for spring break, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, for anybody who is out there interested, definitely look into it for next year. I just wanted to plug that quick.
Cool.
Yeah, again, if you're interested, you can actually get a hold of the CSLC because we just talked about them. So drop in, talk to Kelsey or Caitlin or Jeff or whomever, and they will hook you up.
All right. So the topic I have today, kind of to just introduce it, was spurred by a book that I'm reading for my psychology capstone with Professor Don Anderson King. The book is called A Paradise Built in Hell by author Rebecca Solnit. The idea of the book is that when disasters happen, there are essentially two major views of the disasters. On the one hand, you have the media's perception of the disaster and of how people react in the disaster, and what goes along with that is kind of how elites perceive the disaster, how the people in charge think that people are going to react. This tends to be a very negative view of how people are going to handle the situation. You hear rumors about looting and theft and murder and raping, just mass chaos, so that people a lot of times equate disaster societies with kind of harmful chaotic anarchy where everyone is out for their own good.
Absolutely. Is that the case, though?
No. So on the other hand, I mean, it's interesting to get into. So the other hand is kind of what's actually happening on the ground in disaster, and what this tends to be like is a much more optimistic view. Whereas whereas you have this kind of perception that people are going to be panicking. Usually, when disasters take place, communities organize in a very effective way to take care of their members, to disperse supplies, to find victims, to adapt to the immediate situations at hand. And you also see a much more altruistic and kind of communal approach to the situation that individuals kind of jump into when there's a disaster. Interestingly, though, I think the big point to take away from this is that what you believe in a disaster situation, what you believe humans are like, matters a lot for your reaction. So if you believe that people are generally altruistic and are going to help you, you'll be much more likely to help others. You're not going to use the justification that elites often use for their own selfishness, which is human beings are generally selfish. So I got to look out for myself. I can keep my supplies. I can hoard things, withhold things from other people, even harm other people because they would do the same thing to me because humans are inherently selfish.
Right, I like that, and I actually remember reading an article a while back about researchers. They handed out surveys to people, and they were asking them, like, in a crisis situation, would you and say, like, if you were the only one in the vicinity who had clean water, would you share with others around you? And they had two groups of people, and it was the same exact survey. The only difference was in one group of people, they referred to others as just people, and in the other, they referred to them as consumers. And in the one where they called them consumers, people report being much less trusting of everyone else around them, and just slight little word swap gives you a completely different perspective of how you view other people, and it completely changes people's reactions.
Oh, absolutely.
So that kind of falls in with
that brings up kind of the perspective of language in this, that the way we use language can shape our beliefs and our actions in disaster situations.
Oh, absolutely. The language plays a role, and it's interesting you bring this up. Especially, I mean, this is a great topic because not too long ago we were talking about Hobbes, I think it was.
Oh,
And-
absolutely. Yeah.
And Hobbes is a philosopher. For those of you who don't know, Hobbes is a philosopher from what time period? 1800s.
I want to say 19th century
Okay.
because that was social contract. I want to say 1800s.
Okay. Well, he dealt with this idea that people are naturally, absolutely terrible, and it's only the structured society with a strong government and ruler that allows people to be good and be moral and things like that. But this, what you're telling us right now, it seems to be absolutely, blowing this out of the
Totally
water.
flips it on its head. Yeah.
Real quick, we were off by about 200 years.
200. What year?
1600s.
Oh wow.
1500s to 1600s.
Look at that ruffled collar.
What's a couple centuries?
Yeah. I mean, his work was still around the 1800s. You guys are good.
Yeah. Well, hey. But no, this is absolutely great stuff.
And we have these kind of contrasting views of disaster, but really where this leads us is if it's in fact possible for communities to be have this big culture of mutual aid where everything belongs to everyone and everyone is helping everyone else because everyone's in it together, because there aren't things like class and race to divide us. We're all totally helpless and all need to help each other. If that is possible in a disaster situation, is it possible in everyday life?
But yeah, I mean, what you're saying here is essentially that it takes a disaster to create a utopia.
Essentially, but yeah, of course, there are also examples of at least pseudo utopias in our everyday lucid waking non-disaster lives. For example, kind of attempts at utopias would be like rainbow gatherings, hippie communities, things like that. What's that?
Talking to them.
Oh, okay, my bad. Cool.
Try to keep the little part right in the middle, right there. Yeah.
This is Speaking into a Microphone 101 with Bill Kinter.
It takes a while to get the hang of it, but anyway, back to the point.
So, obviously, people have tried to set up utopias before.
Right, and usually when people have that intention, it does not quite go as planned.
And why is that? I mean, why doesn't it go as planned? It's so one lesson we can learn from these disaster communities is that that improvised non-hierarchical structures work the best. If there's a disaster, I mean, Katrina is probably the biggest disaster in our recent history that we can remember. Just terrible reactions on the part of the elite with.
I don't know if this. I don't know how old this book is. It's probably a year or two old. It's the newest.
Yeah.
The Hurricane Sandy disaster. We've heard a lot of news along these lines actually coming out of there. And this is a great topic because you can start talking about stuff like Marx too, and his political philosophy. So going off the issue, we're starting to question why doesn't this happen in everyday life?
Right.
And this is this begins to be to the core of what we're really looking at here. And Marx would obviously say that it's the fact that there's not social classes and like wealth and things along those lines in these disaster situations that can cause this utopian type society where you have everyone pulling for everyone else.
Right.
I guess you can say the problem with that the problem with that view, of course, is there's no real way to translate that the classlessness of a disaster situation to the population in general.
Right. Was it correct me if I'm wrong, was it Marx or was it somebody else who argued that like a violent revolution wasn't necessary prior to reaching a state of utopia? That was Marx. Okay, I just wanted to be sure.
Yeah, and there don't seem to be any, I mean, just as with anything when you're talking about humans, don't seem to be any hard and fast rules for how this works. So oftentimes there are still classes built into societies after disaster. But the elites in these cases can be extremely altruistic, can empty their entire warehouses to feed a population, or conversely, can try to use the situation to exploit the population to get even more wealth, to displace people, things like that.
Right, like best Korea.
What?
Best Korea.
Best Korea? What's that?
North Korea is best Korea.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Anyway.
Solnit also points out that I mean in this book she kind of points out that disaster is freeing in a lot of ways, and part of it is this class, but part of it is also that in our society, in our kind of postmodern capitalistic society, we're extremely individualistic, and we don't really have the scope to see people for what they are. And the disaster kind of frees a lot of those social norms and kind of social walls and boundaries, things like I have to go to work and I have to go to school and I have to get good grades, and replaces it with very pragmatic things like Bill needs a hamburger, he's hungry, I gotta get him a hamburger, which is an easy enough problem to address.
Wasn't hungry till you said that.
Sorry.
That's kind of say like individualism. Like it sounds like a good thing on the surface, but
Right.
it kind of kills our sense of empathy.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, you can't demonize society or sociocentrism or individualism. Obviously, there's pros and cons to both, but a big thing that you lose with individualism is, I mean, is obviously any real sense of a community, of belonging to something immediately surrounding you that's bigger than yourself, that really matters, that really means something, where you're kind of a piece in this puzzle. You're your own puzzle.
So let's say if there was, if you could find some sort of middle ground between the two, that would be a way of, finding a middle ground between individualism and community.
Mm-hmm.
That could create a sort of, like you said, pseudo utopia without a necessary disaster, without that sort of necessary evil to kind of create the community.
Right.
I mean, is that even possible? Like, is that in human nature? Is that even possible?
Yeah, I think Caleb's point was excellent, that it is very, very hard to translate these lessons into everyday life. It's a struggle, but thinking about it is the first step.
Right, like as cliche as it sounds, that tragedy brings people together.
Mm-hmm.
Like from most people's experience, you can see that is, for the most part, true.
Yeah,
That it does bring people together, and yeah.
Bill, why don't you go ahead and share this book from Amazon on our Facebook page? We can get a chance for some of our viewers to take a peek at it if they're interested.
All right.
All right, can do that.
Wait. Actually, I did have another question.
Sure.
So you're talking about creating a sense of community, just like within, within certain boundaries. But what about
Right.
What about, say, connections with other communities? Like, for example, this is something I read online about like a week or two ago, was that during the 9/11 attacks, a bunch of countries gave aid to the United States. Despite the fact that we're the richest country in the world, a lot of countries did give aid to the United States during the 9/11 terrorist attacks. And in fact, Kenya actually donated 14 cows to the United States.
Interesting.
They gave 14 cows as aid to the United States.
I wonder what happened to those guys.
Well, they were probably gone in a few seconds. But I mean, that kind of brings up interesting point, that like during these disasters, like the tsunamis in Japan, or tsunamis anywhere in the world, or Katrina, or any kind of, a lot of times, more often than not, it seems like natural disasters.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of brings about this sort of international aid, but I don't know. It seems to apply on a global scale as well, not just within one community.
So you're saying kind of, how do you account for like altruism at a distance, as it were?
Right.
Okay.
But like between peoples who have never met and never will meet.
Right.
Right.
I mean, personally, I would chalk something like that up to psychology. You might feel guilty if you don't donate. You might feel good if you do donate. It could also be political. Like there's a tragedy in a country, and you can renew a bond with another country or reinforce the bond by being altruistic, genuinely or ingenuinely.
Is it really altruistic if you have some sort of ulterior
Right,
motive, some
exactly.
sort of agenda that
Yeah,
you're working on?
I guess that's the point. Is
Like-
a lot of these communities arise out of things where what you're helping with is something very tangible. It's right in front of your face. It's a very straightforward need with very straightforward solutions where everyone can be a participant, where everyone can be someone who helps their neighbor out.
That's an excellent point. There was a study done not too long ago that was trying to get into the heart of that issue, and it was little children who were, I think, about 6 or 7 months old, and so they were still like crawling around and things like that. And the research, the purpose of the research was to try and determine whether or not children had the ability to be moral or like try to be altruistic and things like that from an early age. Try to pinpoint if it's natural or whether it's social or what. And so the parents would pretend to look for something, like they had lost their keys or what have you. And they noticed that the child, more times than not, would also try looking around to try and find what the parent was looking for, try and help them out. And other studies along the same lines. So, you hit the nail on the head. If it's something that's tangible and that can be done as a community, then there apparently is some kind of innate something to human nature that seems to want to drive or create a moral action within a person's self.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I don't think it's ever been argued that. I mean, altruism is definitely a part of human nature in a lot of respects. I think for a really good review, you can look at a book called The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins, which talked a lot about kind of the evolutionary perspective of altruism. That, for instance, helping your mother find your keys can be beneficial for your own survival and for passing on your own genes. So yeah, that is that is very interesting to consider. But this book definitely. Oh, it definitely seems to emphasize that people are
Naturally good.
naturally altruistic, and in terms of evolution, I think the reason that it's so easy to be altruistic during a disaster is because we're wired for these very practical solutions. We didn't evolve for 20,000 years with things like internet donations in mind. We've evolved to support our own species, to pass on our own genes, with very pragmatic survival needs in mind.
Well, is it really? Can you say it's really altruistic if you're saying if we evolved it,
Yeah.
then it isn't ultimately selfish then? As you said in your example, that you help your mother find her keys because
Right.
it would benefit you
Right.
ultimately.
I don't know
So
if
it's
we
like-
want to get in.
I mean that's
Yeah.
that's bringing up like the whole argument behind like intentions. Like you may feel that it's being
Yeah.
selfless.
Well, I mean,
Ultimately,
you do have
it's
to.
being
So
selfish.
you do have to agree that there is at least a feeling of altruism.
Right.
There's this
There
feeling
is-
you can have that's like, oh, I feel like I'm probably helping Bill out by giving a hamburger, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might honestly be the only thing we're talking about when we're talking about altruism.
Right.
Because, for instance, if I were to give you a hamburger and then disappear for all of infinity, would you care what my intentions were?
Probably not.
You'd enjoy your tasty burger.
I would. I mean, and you could always bring up the argument that say when people do charity or any kind of volunteering, they're not ultimately doing it to do good. They're doing it to get that good feeling, so that they can feel good about themselves. Otherwise, they wouldn't want to do it, or they wouldn't do it
Absolutely, all human behavior is motivated.
by self-interest.
I don't think there's any altruism born out of a vacuum.
I don't know about the self-interest bit. 5-6 years ago, I would have been on the self-interest boat. but I don't know. I don't know if you can call it. So regards to like the selfish gene, I guess. If altruism is evolutionarily based in being beneficial to the self, and if you are altruistic, at that point, does it really even matter? Can you say you're being selfish if you're being altruistic?
Yeah, that I guess that put in good words exactly my point. That it's just such a the issue of motivation is just such a blurry line, which I mean crosses both the line between evolution and society, but also the line between conscious and unconscious, is that you might genuinely think you're being altruistic, but the underlying reasons could be anything, could be literally anything.
Absolutely, and you can bring up thought experiments too, dealing with morality. Like there was a one from the Bible, I think even it was. There was a man who was a farmer, had two sons, and one of his sons said he was going to help him out, and another one said he wasn't going to, and one of them picked apples, and the other one didn't. And the one who did had no intention of doing it, and his motivations were, for his own self. But he still did this good action. And the other one had good motivations, but in the end accomplished nothing and was detrimental. And so you have to say, you really have to look at how does motivation factor in? Is there a difference between someone who does something for evil intentions and does a good act, and someone who does something for good intentions and does an evil act?
Or rather, should the intentions even be counted at all, as far as whether or not you can call it good or not?
Absolutely.
There is kind of another philosophical view, which we don't need to get into, but I mean, just to bring it up, that says that your internal states, things like beliefs and motivations, don't really pragmatically matter at all. That your actions are really the only thing that count.
Right. I mean, even if you were just like a mindless robot, going to a soup kitchen every day,
People still appreciate that.
That's a good mindless robot, and we really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
What I mean? But it doesn't matter if the robot really cares whether or not it's doing good or anything. It doesn't matter what kind of intentions it has.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like, it really only matters to the individual.
Right.
I mean, unless you have some kind of like malicious intentions, which I can't imagine what kind of malicious intent you would have for going to a soup kitchen. But, I don't know.
Well, maybe if you had malicious intentions that would eventually cause an evil act.
Oh, I mean, that is, I guess, the reason I kind of totally disagree with that view of human nature is that the things that you believe translate very directly into your actions. So, for instance, in the case of this disaster, if you believe that people are bad, if you believe that people are going to start rioting and they're going to be a menace to society and a menace to you and your safety, you'll treat them a very different way than if you believe that they're all going to help each other out, all going to help you out.
Absolutely. You board up your doors and you scare everyone who comes by your property.
Yeah, you shoot them.
Yeah.
Right, and that goes both ways. Even your view of other people affects how you treat other people, and thus affects how they would see you as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So yeah, back to the question of how we could potentially integrate these communities in our everyday life. Yeah, do either of you have any commentary on it? I would like to plug real quick, if you have any commentary on the topic, please call us at 1-616-331-2875.
Yeah. Well,
give your 2 cents. Once again, that's 331-2875.
You're having a lot of fun with this, aren't you?
Oh yeah.
I know, that's one of our favorite things about call-ins. I personally don't have too much to say. I guess I will make a quick plug. There's a couple of groups on campus who are actually doing a service thing for Sandy relief. The Red Cross Club and the Grand Valley Secular Alliance are interested in doing a drive for Sandy and through the Red Cross. So if there's students who are interested, get in contact with... Actually, you can go post right on our Facebook page on the show, and there will be people who get a hold of you. So, post on our Facebook page, Philosophy Talks at Whale Radio, or Philosophy Talks with Bill and Caleb is the official name of the Facebook page. So, yeah, definitely do that. But as for how to integrate this into society, you know what? Actually...
We have an interesting comment here.
Okay. Have her call in. Yeah. No, Vanya. Or Katie.
There is some small hope for these disasters kind of incidentally being implemented in our society, and that is the increasing severity and frequency of natural disasters due to global climate change. It's even been suggested by some that kind of the line between natural disasters and man-made disasters is obsolete, that it's not even worth talking about, because most natural disasters, especially large-scale ones, as we've seen, things like Katrina and Sandy, are fueled by humans' effect on the environment. So as we see more common and severe disasters happening throughout the world, perhaps these communities will become the norm. Sad as that is to say.
That's absolutely possible. And it's interesting. We actually talked about environmental rights last time we did a show. And we got inclusive because we wound up, I played devil's advocate, and
I was getting incredibly infuriated. Because I mean, respectably, admittedly, there was holes in my precinct. Because I'm a little bit biased. I just automatically assume that, it's good to protect, the environment and, be green and all that good stuff. So I don't even need to be convinced.
Just curious, what's the counter argument to being green?
Well,
just screw it, there's no point in that.
Well, we're kind of essentially around social contract and property rights.
Okay.
And his main argument was that because we have property rights, because we own land. I mean, I argued that we ultimately don't own land, that we can't. So that because if we have the right to that property, we can do, whatever we will with it.
Okay.
Whatever serves our own purpose, even if it is harmful to that land ultimately.
Okay.
And even if it is harmful to other living things, or yeah.
So you're kind of saying that humans morally have a collective right to euthanasia?
Whoa! We skipped a step here.
What? I mean, like killing your the human race killing themselves is all right. It's all right.
Wait,
if they have that right.
Okay, hold on.
Or they have that right.
All right, back
Sure.
Yeah,
You jumped in here.
you jumped a lot of it.
Nice
Please.
and cold and analytic for us, please.
I was just trying to paraphrase your argument. I'm sorry.
Oh wait,
Apparently I did a very poor job of it.
Well, okay. Well, yeah. I'd say you can be cool with euthanasia. You've got a right to life. Why not a right to death too? I mean, that's a topic for a different show, I guess. There's always time to talk about that.
Yeah.
But as for like property rights and owning your own place, people have a right to own property. We all generally agree on it.
Right.
So we have the right for that. It's part of the social contract now, and you have the right to do with your property whatever you want. And so if I want to pollute on my swampland and it bothers your half of the swampland, you should pay me to not pollute instead of I pay you to clean it up.
Right. And on the other side of that, I was arguing that ultimately, our ethical standards come from an obligation to other members of our society for the betterment of society as a whole. Because social contract dictates that ethics and laws are necessary in order for society to function and exist.
Right.
And I was arguing that ultimately because it's not just the members of the society that constitute the society, it's everything, it's the environment and everything included in it. That's also necessary for the society to exist. So they should also be considered, how we have ethical obligations towards others, we also have ethical obligations towards other animals, plants, water, air, land, the environment, everything that constitutes what is necessary for a society.
Oh, I absolutely agree.
Right.
I see little difference between dumping oil on your land that finds its way to a neighbor's property and just straight up dumping the oil on your neighbor's land.
Right.
So yeah, Caleb, I'm sorry. I'll defer to Bill to Bill with this one. I think if you have any sense that humans are responsible for protecting others or protecting life or protecting the environment or Earth, then that's not at all our call.
Well, I actually agree with Bill and you as well with the idea of environmental, the necessity of taking care of the environment.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm obligated to it from a very different angle than animal rights and from like the right to life for plants and things along those lines, for the environment as a whole.
Right, like for example, we can't apply the same ethics to all other living things as we do to each other, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to eat anything else without it being considered murder or some weird form of cannibalism or something.
But you can get behind us maybe on aesthetic grounds and pragmatic grounds. That I mean, so
Wait,
first,
aesthetic grounds?
it looks pretty.
Right, like
it looks super pretty.
We want to protect the pond because because it looks nice.
Yeah, I mean, so hypothetically, if small edible rocks started frequently raining down from outer space, and humans could survive just fine without any other life, if that were hypothetical, it would probably still be a miserable life without anything else on the planet.
Are you doing hand farts?
Yes. It's fun. Try it.
You have a competition?
Yeah. Are you doing it into the mic? You can't do it. You can't do it. The show has lost all seriousness.
Environmental activism with Caleb Templar.
All right. Well,
Wow, our level of class is plummeting fast.
it went since we had started having to talk about Nickelback, and I had to explain to you how bad it was. We instantly lost all of our viewers' credibility.
I'd like all the listeners to know that we are now holding our pinkies in the air to try to
Bring up
account for the hand farts.
I think there's iced tea here somewhere. We laughed at what were we laughing at?
I mean, the Greeks invented fart jokes. Come on.
They did?
Yeah.
Can I hear the original fart joke in the native Greek tongue?
I don't know. You'd have to read one of Aristophanes' plays or something. I don't know. Like
I mean, farts are pretty funny.
That's true.
Early Greek comedies, they had a lot of fart jokes. Let me put it that way.
I'll
Google the first fart joke.
Oh, please.
Yeah.
The comedian Louis C.K., who has a TV show, devoted an entire half an episode to a very extended fart joke. It was impressive.
Flatulence humor.
Aristophanes.
That's so much
This
more.
is philosophy talks with Bill and Caleb.
So much more like
Flatulence humor.
light and it sounds so much more sophisticated than it really is.
Yes, the earliest fart joke was 5th century BC in plays like The Knights and the Clouds, both by Aristophanes, which contain numerous fart jokes. The Clouds. Yeah. Oh. Right here? Oh. Oh yeah, this is a quote by Homer. Apparently, he later explains he got to the afterlife with a quote from Homer: "Breezes wafted me from Lion unto Siconian land." Or from Ilion? Yeah, I think that's Ilion. So Ilion smells like farts, so he went to Siconia.
Yeah. It was probably a lot more funny at the time.
In the 6th century BC.
Yeah. All right, back to what we were talking about though. So yes, I'm totally on board with you for aesthetic rights or the aesthetic value of the environment, but mostly it's got to be human centric and current.
Are you saying just the pragmatic aspect that edible rocks are not going to start falling from the sky?
Well, no. I mean, if edible rocks started falling from the sky, that being the case, would it be immoral for people to eat meat? You know what? Actually, I would still say no, they're totally cool for them to eat animals. No big deal.
Given the option of given a more ethical alternative, because we do have, with meat, we do have vegetarian alternatives for any meat really. So and we can get adequate protein without it, which was not the case for most of human history. And okay, we have a call.
We have a call.
Okay.
This is Caleb with Whale Radio.
Are you on the air?
Can I plug in?
Who is this?
Oh, that's Vanya.
It's Echo now. What do you want?
There we go.
know, you've turned it from environmentalism to
Hard jokes.
vegetarianism sort of conversation.
I did not expect we were.
Yeah, I guess so.
Here.
Yeah.
Jokes.
Well, basically, you guys are just saying, in terms of, I can't deal with this. Okay.
Echo, you're on the air. You're on the air.
Yeah.
Keep talking.
So your arguments are being like based around animal rights and other such things, and us, you know, our relation to that, and you know how you don't really have that kind of an argument for it either. But the thing is, when it comes to environmentalism and
Go ahead.
keeping things, you know, in homeostasis, or at least best for humans and
Okay.
the environment and their condition,
Okay.
you have to edit the population. Like, the United States, the terrain's changed a lot from the Europeans coming over. So there are a lot more deer. And deer kind of are getting into crops, and they're just really a nuisance. So that's why they have hunting laws.
Okay. Well, absolutely. I'll agree with you right there.
What?
I'll agree with you there.
I can't hear you.
I will agree with you there.
Yeah. And then, like, you know, they'll only let out so many doe licenses, and then so many hunting licenses even. So they, like, you know, some of the government programs are on that, like DNR. I mean, I don't know.
I'm sorry, Echo. Are you making a point against environmentalism?
I can't hear what you just said.
Could you just sum up what you were just saying as it relates to environmentalism?
I'm not sure if she can't hear you.
There's 20 seconds.
Yeah, like you have to talk to that one.
Hey, Echo.
Hello.
All right. Would you mind just kind of summing up what you just said in terms of environmentalism?
Okay. So when it comes to environmentalism, there are a lot of factors that people don't really think of because they just think about, you know, I recycle.
Right.
That's cool. Or they cut down trees. That's bad.
Right.
Or, you know, we shouldn't eat animals because animals have feelings. Or we shouldn't eat animals because factory farming and that other shit.
Okay. Please don't swear in there.
Oh.
It's fine. It's fine.
I am
Keep
so
talking.
sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
But the thing
Lakers
is
have a
that-
tough skin.
I'm gonna cry.
What's that?
I'm gonna cry.
Oh, please don't. Please don't. That'd be terrible for our ratings.
Echo, you're just fine. Go ahead.
No, but there are many, many factors that people don't take in, and it is especially because environmentalism is looked at from an anthropocentric view. So
Okay.
you guys are talking about, you know, barriers of land and people and their owning rights.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about, like, I can do whatever I want and then ruin, like, this person's land.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it has a lot more to do with that because you're not just ruining their land. You're not just ruining, you know, let's see. Yeah, if you have enough shit stuff coming
Yeah.
out of, like, the Mississippi and the Gulf of Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
like, you're going beyond your bounds of the United States into, like, Mexico and what affects them, you know?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And as Caleb was saying, well, you know, like, one guy should pay the other to not, like, the oil or something like that. When really it's an infringement on the other guy's rights because he didn't want that.
Okay.
Like, it's, I don't know.
I'm going to hand you over to Caleb. There you go. I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap this up pretty soon because we are about to change discs. So we're going to have to take a short break while we do that. But last comment before we take off. And thanks for calling in, by the way. It's great hearing you.
we would have to say, at least I personally would have to say, I know Bill would disagree, that the idea of it's based on this idea of communal private property, which sounds kind of absurd when you first listen to it at first glance. But when you begin to get into it, it creates a situation where it looks like a person has a right to almost like a slice of a pie. And they have a right to a slice of this pie, and whatever they do to this pie, it can contaminate other people's bits of pie. And they do not have, you can say they don't have the right to do that to their pie, and they should pay to clean up for all this damage that they've done. But in reality, if you're going to say that there's private property rights, then you have to go into and specify what you can and cannot do. So, for example, the issue of the example of the oil polluter in the swampland, or a person who pollutes smog right next to an apple orchard. The person who pollutes smog next to an apple orchard, say, he is not allowed to do so because it ruins this farmer's crops. Well, at the same time, this person who is running the factory, there's this idea in American culture that the polluter must always pay for the damage they've done. But in reality, what you can say to a certain extent, what they've been doing is using up a certain amount of their own private property in a way that they see fit, and they're entitled to that under property rights, and under a conception of property rights that we have, without having to get entangled before environmentalism. And so you have to say, once you begin to take this into issues like economics, you have to break this down in such a way that the polluter is not the only one carrying the burden when they have the right to do what they will with their own land, and they're being denied that right. So I agree, the person polluting is a bad thing, but it is a complicated issue.
Yeah, it's very, very complicated. It's not thought of as such. And also, as I was trying to say, the anthropocentric view of this right now, you're only concerned